A huge part of our healing from narcissistic abuse is radical acceptance, which basically means don't be naive. It's time to take off the rose-colored glasses and let the scales fall from your eyes. The world is not as nice a place as you thought it was. We're not in Kansas anymore. There's no Santa Claus. There's no Tooth Fairy. There's no Easter Bunny. There's only Bad Bunny. Evil exists in the world, and if you don't believe in evil, it believes in you. And other people are not like you at all. They don't think like you, they don't have the same belief system or value set, and they don't speak the same language. Oil and water, English and Spanish. And I really think part of our radical acceptance includes this idea of discernment, which basically means pay attention to the red flags. It doesn't mean that you have to be hyper defensive, armed to the teeth, and ready for war absolutely everywhere you go in life. And it doesn't mean be judgmental. I'm not saying judge people. It just all goes back to that Maya Angelou quote, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Stop giving second chances. Stop giving trillionth chances. Stop sweeping everything under the rug and turning a blind eye to everything. Learn to see people for what they really are and accept them for where they are without trying to change them, instead of putting them on a pedestal and idealizing them for who you want them to be for you. Because asking other people to change for you so that you can feel better is exactly what bullies do to us. When I say red flags, I'm not talking about the 20 or so actual workplace bullying behaviors that I have identified that range from minor, petty, immature, and attention-seeking behaviors that resemble childhood bullying, like staring, harassment, nose-holding, ridicule, and passive-aggressive insults, all the way to big-ticket assaults on your actual work, like withholding, sabotage, gossip, and lying, otherwise known as the narcissistic smear campaign, and even up to borderline illegal violations like stealing, voice raising, physical boundary violations, and stalking. I'm talking about behaviors that may indicate that a person has the potential to be toxic. Granted, in my experience, most workplace bullies start bullying you with at least one of the behaviors that I mentioned the minute that they meet you. Sometimes even before they meet you, like over the phone, for example. In my life, people usually insult me the minute that they meet me. I get ridiculed and insulted just walking through the grocery store. If I didn't have this channel, I'm sure pretty much every single one of you would be making fun of me. But some workplace bullies actually have very few tells, and it can take a year to a year and a half before they show their true colors and lay all their cards on the table. Narcissism can be defined in part by so-called narcissistic charm or charisma. When it comes to most workplace bullies, I'm not buying it. If workplace bullies are charming, then I'm Beyonce. But some workplace bullies have actually cultivated a pretty smooth mask, and it can fool sometimes even the best of us. Again, the biggest red flag of workplace bullying is your own intuition, which is your higher self's inner knowing about the quality of another person's spirit, because your soul knows everything. In order to be in touch with your intuition, you have to be in touch with your emotions, which means you have to get out of your head, descend from your intellect, get back into your heart space, and just pay attention to how you feel. How do you feel? How does this person make you feel? How do you feel after this person leaves your presence? I bet if you just relax and ask yourself that question, the answer will come to you immediately. Narcissists will leave you feeling drained, disillusioned, demoralized, hopeless and helpless, sometimes disgusted and despairing, or just confused, like, what just happened? What was that? They can also make you sick. When I was much younger, before I had any clue about spirituality or how to protect myself energetically, a couple of workplace bullies sent me racing to the toilet to vomit the minute that I shook their hands. And they can also leave you feeling dirty, like literally. Narcissists are master projectors, and they're also stage 5 trauma dumpers because they're so emotionally dysregulated. Narcissists interact with other people really for only 2 reasons. Either they want to take something from you and use you as a source of supply, and or they want to projectile vomit out all of their unhealed pain and suffering all over you and force you to process it for them because they can't. An acquaintance of mine calls it being slimed. Narcissists tend to leave this nasty, toxic residue over all and sundry everywhere they go. And it can make you want to immediately, obsessively, compulsively wash your hands or tidy up your space to get rid of the bad energy. Empaths, on the other hand, will uplift you with their high vibrational, high level, positive, optimistic, hopeful, and refreshing energy. And it's not because they aggressively kiss your ass with vapid, empty, superficial flattery. It's not anything that they say or do, it's just their energy. There may not be one single high vibrational person in your workplace who makes you feel good, but neutral is still better than negative. As for the remaining red flags, Dr. Ramani says that a narcissist is at the core an insecure person. And when it comes to workplace bullying, insecurity is the name of the game. So what you're looking for is insecurity, which can manifest in a host of different ways. It's important not to confuse insecurity with social anxiety. We've all met these people who present as fearful, avoidant, anxious, shy, introverted, socially awkward, and generally unsure of themselves. And it's obviously due to some kind of trauma like abuse or bullying or both. You yourself may be like that sometimes, and it can be adorable. Poor social skills is not necessarily narcissism, but rather a gentle and tender spirit who has been wounded. Social anxiety is different from the real deep core inner insecurity that defines narcissism and that arises out of some disruption in normal emotional development. It could be severe trauma like abuse. It could be that this is an only child who was spoiled to death, or it could be some kind of neurological problem. A narcissist is kind of like a very poorly constructed building that is desperately clinging to an exoskeleton of external scaffolding just to remain standing, if that image helps. Dr. Ramani outlined 7 core characteristics of narcissism, as well as quite a few others, but the big 7 are lack of empathy. In fact, that's the biggest one, and imperative for narcissism: entitlement, grandiosity, superficiality, chronic seeking of validation and admiration, and to that I would add attention, rage, and arrogance. There can also be a lot of sadism and schadenfreude, which is taking pleasure in other people's pain, pathological jealousy and envy, lying and cheating, because all narcissists are always pathological liars, projection, and gaslighting, which is denying your emotional reality. Narcissism is also called an antagonistic or high conflict personality style, which is a fancy way of saying that they love drama. They don't just thrive on it, they live for it. It is their narcissistic supply. Narcissists need the emotional energy of other people to feed off of as a source of supply because they don't know that they exist at all without it. Narcissists are not peaceful people. They are not at peace with themselves. Quite the opposite. Inside, it's nothing but chaos, turmoil, drama, and conflict, and they need to externalize their dysfunction by creating it in other people because they can't heal it. As a direct result of all of that insecurity, narcissists have a pathological psychotic need for power, domination, and control over everything and everyone in their environment, which is what workplace bullying is all about. Insecure people need to dominate. So based on those characteristics, let's talk about some of the red flags that you can look out for to identify workplace bullying. Lack of empathy is tricky. If narcissists really don't have any empathy, then how do they know when they're hurting someone? They know when they are causing another person pain and suffering, and they derive pleasure vicariously from it. Some of them may actually be very astute observers and judges of human nature, with their own intuitive abilities, which they abuse not to heal others, but instead to manipulate them. They know how to size you up real good and identify you as an easy mark. Narcissists abuse their empathy only for the express purpose of collecting dirt on people in order to weaponize it and use it against them later. They're predatorial. They're looking for weaknesses and vulnerabilities that they can exploit, manipulate, and capitalize on to their advantage. Some workplace bullies may be able to express variable empathy, which is basically, I can only feel empathy if I can relate. Most workplace bullies will feign empathy, especially if they're women, because women are socialized to be nice and emotional. But you can tell that it's performative. There's no real emotion behind it. If you ever share any personal pain in the workplace, and I recommend you never do that, they will show an interest, not because they care about you, but only because they derive pleasure from your suffering. Some of them, especially the coverts, may make a big show out of how empathetic they are. In fact, that is their narcissistic false self. I'm the one that everyone comes to for advice around here because I'm the world's best Christian and I'm so kind and caring and nurturing. I am a shoulder for everyone to cry on. When I worked at the nonprofit for domestic and sexual violence, one of the founders of the agency died. So there was a funeral attended by hundreds of people, and somehow my covert narcissist boss managed to make the whole funeral all about her and her big over-the-top display of grief. That's a classic narc move, turning someone else's celebration of life into their own personal one-woman show. All while narcissists have no empathy for other people, they sure do have a lot of empathy for themselves, especially the coverts. A lot of people get fooled by covert narcissists because they can initially appear empathetic and emotionally available. Covert narcissists are heavily victimized, mired in woe is me, self-pity. If you listen carefully to all of that weepy, teary, whinging, and complaining, the overriding narrative is that their life is bad only because everyone else has it better than they do, which ultimately is just another expression of pathological jealousy. An easy identifier of workplace bullying is the narcissistic sob story, which is a major red flag for me. Watch out for the narcs who have to trauma dump their personal pain onto you the minute that they meet you. It's almost always going to be one of the big three: I'm a single parent, I'm taking care of an aging parent, or I'm putting myself through school. Sometimes gangs all here. To that, I'm gonna go ahead and add the health problems, 4 hours of narcissistic monologuing about their celiac disease, their lupus, their diabetes, whatever. Look, everyone has something going on. Everybody has family drama, rama mama. No one has a perfect life. If you did, you wouldn't be here. You can't know the light unless you've been in the dark. In fact, when people are secure and healed with real self-esteem and a secure attachment style, you would be amazed to find out what they've been through. They were in a domestic violence situation and had to go to a shelter. They had a drug addiction. They lost a child. They were once homeless. Sometimes I think the most secure and healed people in the world have actually been through the worst darkness. And we're not robots. It's okay to share. But non-narcissists and non-bullies will usually take their time and wait about 6 months before divulging any personal information in order to deepen the relationship. Narcissistic workplace bullies will shove their narcissistic sob story in your face the minute that they meet you as a "don't mess with me" defense. Don't even think about messing with me. Narcissistic entitlement basically means laws and rules, or even basic common social mores, do not apply to me. They apply to everyone else, but not to me. In fact, if other people break the rules, narcissists will pounce upon those violations as an opportunity to devalue other people, which deflects from whatever they're up to. Laws and rules to narcissists are really just little challenges, and they will giggle with glee and delight like the 3-year-old toddlers that they really are if they know that they are getting away with something. And rules include boundaries, which means that workplace bullies are psychological rapists who categorically refuse to take no for an answer. In fact, workplace bullies may misinterpret boundaries, again, as a challenge to be overcome like a video game, especially if the target is a woman, because unfortunately there is still a lot of cultural programming that women supposedly play hard to get, and you just have to wear down her defenses until she finally relents. So narcissistic entitlement breeds the workplace bullying technique of harassment, which is anything that workplace bullies continue to do or say after you have already said no or stop. One of my go-to fave ways to identify whether or not someone is a narcissist is simply to assert a boundary with them, and I have a video on that. Normal people, when you assert boundaries with them, will simply accept it, drop it, move on. The subject is closed and you never hear about it again. Narcissists will explode with violent, abusive indignation, outrage, and defensiveness, retaliate, and then continue the behavior now that they know that it hurts you. So if you're not working and you're preparing to go back to work, you might invent for yourself some kind of rule, a rule of engagement, as it were, that you can throw out there just to see how other people respond, to test the waters, so to speak. I'll give you an example. So, I worked as a tutor for about 15 years, and before the pandemic, I would almost always go to people's homes. For obvious reasons, I don't want to be alone inside a private residence with a man or a minor. So if my student was male, I would always say, if there is a woman inside your home at all times, I can come to your home. If not, we can meet at a mutually convenient location. And almost every man I ever worked with was like, oh, Sure thing, no problem. My mom's here, my wife's here, and the lady of the house would always come out to greet me so that I knew she was there. But if it was a young single guy who lived alone, he would come out and meet me at Starbucks or wherever. I've worked one-on-one with over 300 people, and there were only 2 men who reacted incredibly defensively as though I was accusing them of something. That's a red flag. This is an insecure person, probably emotionally unstable. Handle with care. Proceed with caution. Narcissistic grandiosity or arrogance can sound like boasting or bragging. I think grandiosity is also tricky because people should be able to feel proud of their accomplishments and should be able to share them without making others feel bad. No one should have to voluntarily dim their light, make themselves small, and self-deprecate with false humility. So insecure pieces of shit can feel better about their stupid fucking little lives. But narcissistic workplace bullies may shove their accomplishments in your face as an intimidation tactic. In my essay on workplace bullying, I wrote about 2 teachers at different schools who felt compelled to tell me that they had 26 years of experience, said in this very arrogant and haughty tone. It's always 26 years for some reason. And one of them really got up in my face to do that. If a workplace bully ever pulls a control move like that on you, just say sarcastically, "Oh, I'm so intimidated," and walk away. Just as workplace bullies try to browbeat you with their accomplishments, they may do the same with their religion, especially the spiritual narcissist. Organized religion is very attractive to narcissists because it's the perfect false self. It externalizes an identity for them like a costume or a mask. All they have to do is put on a cross and poof, they're a good person. For spiritual narcissists, religion has nothing to do with what real faith is all about. It's just another way for them to assert a false sense of superiority vis-a-vis other people. Well, I'm going to be saved, and all of these other people are going to die excruciating, miserable deaths because I have Jesus and they're infidels. So I'm so special and superior. Watch out for the spiritual narcissists who have to shove their religion, like name-dropping Bible study, in your face the minute that they meet you. That is another don't mess with me defense. Don't even think about messing with me. Religious people who actually are spiritual practice quietly, and it may take you months to even figure out that they even have a religion. Like, oh, I didn't know you were Lutheran. And it's not just Protestantism. I've had narcissistic clients who were Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, and I even had one Buddhist student from Thailand who was an absolute nightmare. And it's not just organized religion. People who are into alternative spirituality like crystals and witchcraft like to lord it over you too. And to spiritual narcissism, I'm going to add the 12-step programs, which are a veritable religion for some people. In my experience, narcissistic grandiosity can also take the form of this very bizarre self-definition that they do. Narcissists are highly self-referential. Like people with other personality disorders, they struggle with identity. Some of them may be pushing 70 and they still don't really know who they are. Because narcissists are so superficial, they can never go deep. So they tend to self-define largely in comparison to other people, usually by putting other people down. In fact, often they don't know that they exist at all unless it is in opposition to some other. Well, I exist because you don't. I'm good because you're bad. I feel good because you feel bad. I'm up because you're down, etc. And they're territorial, so they have to mark their territory and stake their claim by saying, I exist. So they really love to repeatedly tell you who they are. And it can sound incongruous, like something just doesn't add up. When they do that, I think that they are actually just trying to convince themselves of the false self that they have fabricated. For example, my first therapist was a full-blown psychopath who broke the law multiple times in her treatment of me. I'll never forget our first session when she sat across from me, patting her chest with her hand and saying repeatedly, I'm rural nurturing. She actually was trailer park trash, so the adverb really was apparently pronounced rural. I'm rural nurturing. At the time, I was only 25 years old and weighed 112 pounds, but I distinctly remember feeling confused, looking at her and thinking, lady, you are the least nurturing person I have ever met in my life. The German narcissist I had sex with was the same. He used to say to me repeatedly, I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. Meanwhile, it was 6 months of devaluation, judgment, criticism, insults, ridicule. Some narcissists may refer to themselves in the third person, using their name. They may even use the royal we. If these self-referential comments sound jarring, and they usually come out of the blue, apropos of nothing, that's because normal people don't really talk about themselves like that. They don't need to describe themselves with words. They just show up and let their actions speak for themselves. Just as narcissists have to define themselves, they have to define you. They have to put you in a box, and it's going to be whatever box makes you work for them. Your feelings be damned, because you're not a human being and you don't have any feelings. And that box is going to be incredibly one-dimensional. Narcissists listen incredibly selectively. It's amazing. You could sit across the table from them for 2 hours and they would walk away with only 3 words. Narcissists are very easily distracted by pretty shiny things, and the same goes for language too, apparently. Out of one complete sentence, they hear only 1 or 2 words, and they're going to take that ball and run with it, and even start pathologically lying about it with a lot of misinformation, distortion, and spin. Meanwhile, the message that you were trying to convey is completely lost in translation. Just no clue on that one. I wonder how they managed to pass reading class in school, because they can't grasp the main idea. They have to gossip about you, but they can't understand you because they can't understand themselves. So you may find that very quickly there is some kind of weird rumor about you spreading like wildfire throughout the workplace that is a grotesque misrepresentation of who you really are and what you do. It's like, let's say, for example, when you were 8 years old, you had a cat. So for the next 30 years in your narcissistic family system, for every birthday and every Christmas, all you get is cat stuff, because you've been typecast as the cat person, even though the cat's been dead for decades. That's all you are to them. That's all you will ever be. Once you get branded with a label, you can never get rid of it. For example, I was a Russian major and lived in Russia for a couple of years, and all of that was a quarter of a century ago. It was a mistake that I made when I was 19, And I don't want to talk about something that happened 5 presidential administrations ago. I'm not bilingual. I never was. I probably have a 50-word vocabulary at this point. When I watch things in French or Russian on Netflix, I just turn on the dubbing because I can't understand anything. Just for the record, there is absolutely nothing Russian about me. I am not Russian. I'm not European. I am American. In fact, I'm a 10th generation American. But everywhere I went for decades, I was just the Russia girl, because ignorant and uneducated people have no idea how language acquisition works. It got so bad that I finally took it off my resume and started lying that I majored in English, because I got so sick of being pigeonholed, and I got so sick of what expats call the stupid Russia questions. What did you eat? I ate food, as one does. American exceptionalists have to believe that everyone else in the world has it worse than they do, and no one has anything to eat. And you know, if I studied Spanish and lived in Mexico, everyone would just be like, whatever. They wouldn't even hear it, because narcissists are famously prejudiced. They're only interested in white countries, and Russia is so exotic, which is in and of itself a form of bigotry. Narcissists have a real need to tell you who you are, even though you are already a fully formed adult, separate and apart from them. And they may even get into an argument with you about it, which is a form of gaslighting, and again, because they thrive on conflict. When I worked at the nonprofit, I asked my covert narcissist boss to stop telling my coworkers that I spoke foreign languages, because I don't. That was a lie that she was spreading about me, and she literally shook her head and said, nope, I'm gonna keep telling them. Narcissistic arrogance means that narcissists are defined by this belief that they are superior to others. But again, I'm not buying it. Because narcissists are so insecure, at their core, they actually pathologically hate themselves. And it isn't that they feel superior, it's that they think that they should be. They do feel special and deserving of special treatment. For some reason, they are not comfortable being just like everybody else. They have to differentiate. They are not okay being okay. They don't do power sharing, and they are literally allergic to equality. If you have the audacity to approach these people in a spirit of equality and treat them the same way you treat everybody else, they will take personal offense. Again, insecure people have a compulsion to dominate. Workplace bullies have to assert dominance, which is what workplace bullying is all about. That's why it's called narcissistic abuse. It's all about power and control, and that's what abuse is. That's why we show survivors of domestic violence the power and control wheel. Workplace bullies have different ways of asserting dominance. The cumulative message is that you are not a human being and you don't have the right to exist at all. And I believe there is a narcissism channel called Permission to Exist. This again is the all or nothing, black or white, us versus them, binary. This town ain't big enough for the two of us. If you exist, that means I don't, and vice versa. The need to dominate results in the narcissistic monologue by which workplace bullies hold you hostage, or at the very least, that famous narcissistic dismissiveness. They can't lean in. If they can't relate, then they have to dominate and control and get a handle on it because they're afraid and it intimidates them. They have to have the upper hand. Case in point, 2 decades ago in the workplace, a coworker of mine had just gotten married. So I was asking him about his and his wife's synastry, which is the astrological compatibility of a couple. And my narcissistic boss, who actually had a reputation for being stupid, came over and interrupted us in this loud, booming voice. "Well, I believe in Jesus Christ." And there were several of us, and we were all so stunned. We just stood there staring at him. And he just kept saying that over and over again. "Well, I believe in Jesus Christ." That's a classic narc control move. Whoa. This conversation is not about me. And if it's not about me, I can't relate. So I have to hijack it, monopolize it, dominate it, and make it all about me, because it's all about me. Again, narcissists are defined by superficiality because they can't go deep. This characteristic too is tricky because the conversation in the workplace is by nature superficial, as it should be. It's small talk about the weather around the water cooler. We're here to work, not spend 4 hours a day gossiping or taking 3 beer lunches on the organization's dime at the most expensive restaurant in the most expensive zip code to gossip some more, which is exactly what workplace bullies do. In my country, at least, it's impolite to talk about politics or religion in the workplace, but workplace bullies do anyway, and they will violently make sure that everyone agrees with them because narcissists are famously dogmatic and they do not tolerate a difference of opinion. I think the difference here is that it just never gets deep, no matter how much time you spend with them. And you really see the superficiality in narcissistic romantic relationships. Again, it never gets deep, no matter how long you are together. Narcissists cannot do depth, especially emotional depth. When it comes to emotions, narcissists are basically a 2-hit wonder. It's rage or pathological jealousy. Anything else in the range of human emotion is out of their wheelhouse. In the workplace, superficiality rears its ugly head in the form of the workplace bullying technique of objectification. Again, objectification is not an innocent passing compliment about your looks. It is this chronic, nonstop, unrelenting, psychotic, pathological hyper-obsession with every single inch of your physical body at the expense of your humanity, which is your ideas, your thoughts, or your feelings. It's disgusting and it's harassment. And it all goes back to that Eleanor Roosevelt quote, "Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people." You may learn very early on that you are limited to only 2 topics of conversation with these people: things and people, food and gossip. I have worked with dozens of people who did not have the capacity to discuss anything that was not related to the physical body. If you want to talk about anything related to your physical body, what you're wearing, what you're eating, how you're exercising, who you're fucking, or more importantly, who's fucking you, they will light up like pinball machines, like little kids on Christmas morning. But if you ever want to share anything even remotely human about your experience, it's a non-response. They can't lean in, they can't relate. Normal people will at least ask you some questions to try to understand. Workplace bullies will stare at you like you are an animal in a zoo or an alien from outer space, or react very defensively with that twitchy, flinchy thing, like you are a foreign object that they are trying to expel, or dismiss you with other dismissive behaviors like coughing, shifting uncomfortably, looking at their watch, looking at their phone, or they will abruptly change the subject and start holding you hostage with the narcissistic monologue, or when push comes to shove, just get up and leave. Leave the room and abandon you. Worst case scenario, they may use your expression of humanity as an opportunity to start bullying you with ridicule. Let's say, for example, I don't know, you visited an art museum with your partner at the weekend and you came across some particularly moving pieces of art and you had a transformative emotional experience that you would like to share. If you do that, these people will stare at you like you are speaking a foreign language. So one thing that you might do, again, if you're out of work and preparing to re-enter the workplace, is think of something personal, not too personal, but just important to your internal emotional reality that you can, again, toss out there to test the waters and see what kind of response you get, if any. For example, if you've watched my channel long enough, by now you know I'm so obsessed with astrology, I can't formulate a complete sentence without mentioning astrology. And I don't proselytize, and I never expect anyone to be on board with my stuff because that's what narcs do. Everywhere I go, I just assume that no one knows anything about astrology, so I don't talk about it in real life and I keep it to myself. I know that if I lived in India, everyone would be down with what I'm saying, but given where I live, I don't expect that. But I might start mentioning some astrological things to my coworkers just to see what kind of response I get. All while narcissists are completely and totally dismissive of your humanity, they are very weirdly hypervigilant, anxious, on edge, defensive, and hyper externally focused on you. That again is the insecurity. Insecurity arises out of fear. Workplace bullies are fear-based people. They feel intimidated and they feel threatened. You are bullied because you pose a threat. Threat to what? Could be their job. Most often I find it is their narcissistic ego, which is some kind of superlative, superior status that they have fabricated inside this delusional alternate reality where they are the kings and queens of their own private fiefdom, and now here you come along upsetting the apple cart. I know you are a peaceful person and never intend to threaten anyone. Doesn't matter, it's their perception. Anytime people experience fear, they have a trauma response: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Again, when people feel insecure, they have a compulsion to dominate. Anytime people feel threatened, they're either going to run away from the threat or they're going to try to neutralize it. Some of your coworkers may have the flight response to fear. They ignore you, snub you, refuse to engage with you. That's a fear-based person. They feel threatened and intimidated, and they're running away from you. Not literally, but energetically. Some of your insecure coworkers may have the fawn response. This again is where objectification comes in, and that's why, to me, objectification is a red flag of workplace bullying. The word flattery has no good connotation. There's nothing good about flattery. It's fake and manipulative. It's giving to get. I don't like it when people blow smoke up my ass because I know they're afraid of me, they feel intimidated, and they're trying to put down the threat. When people feel uncomfortable because they have anxiety, they have to offload their discomfort and their anxiety by trying to make you feel as uncomfortable and anxious as they do. So this is where the workplace bullying technique of harassment comes in, especially the 20 rapid fire series questions of aggressive, abusive, invasive, violating, intrusive, and inappropriate personal questions. You can tell by the tone that this is not a person with any real, genuine, or sincere interest in getting to know you as a human being and establishing a connection with you. This is a fear-based and insecure person with an anxious attachment style who is trying to medicate that anxiety by offloading it onto you. Finally, harassment also includes narcissists' very unsettling habit of asking you questions and then not even listening to the answers, especially when they're eating. Because narcissists are so terrified of intimacy, they love to use food as a way to differentiate, create distance, and send the message that they are more important than other people and don't really care about them. It's like every Brad Pitt movie ever made. He's always eating. Raise your hand if it's happened to you. You are the lunchtime clown. You were put on this earth for their entertainment while they stuff their faces. But you don't get to eat because, again, you're not a human being. How many times has a coworker entered my workspace, stuffing his face with something disgusting and asking me questions with his mouth full? And again, not listening to the answers. You will notice that if you answer their questions, nothing happens. They can't respond. The conversation goes nowhere. There's no follow-up. There is no flow to the conversation because it's not a conversation. It's an interrogation. The objective is not to get to know you. It is to make you feel as uncomfortable as they do. If you are bilingual, try answering their questions in a foreign language. See what happens. They probably won't even hear it. All while workplace bullies are assaulting you with questions that make you feel uncomfortable, they will not respond positively to yours. So another red flag to look out for is this hyper-defensiveness, which arises again out of insecurity and self-importance. Narcissists fully expect you to hold them in very high regard and to whip out your crystal ball, read their minds, and intuitively understand them and know everything about them that makes them so amazing in the first place. And if you don't, they will talk down to you, implying that you're stupid, to again assert dominance and a false sense of superiority. So watch out for these hyper-defensive overreactions that are a disproportionate misinterpretation of what you originally said. That's not in my job description. For example, when I worked in the oil field services industry, on my first day, I had to go to one of those god-awful luncheons where they all dive bomb you like a pack of rabid vultures. And the coworker sitting next to me mentioned the Dutch language. And I'm interested in languages. So I innocently asked her, "Do you speak Dutch?" And she looked at me and sneered, "I'm Dutch? That's where I'm from?" Like straight up Regina George Mean Girl vibes. I don't know how I was supposed to know that she was Dutch. She wasn't wearing clogs, and those people don't all look alike, but that is the narcissistic defensiveness. Don't you know who I am? Right now you might be wondering why there are some people in the workplace that workplace bullies can talk to, get along with, hang out with, socialize with, even be friends with. Well, those are their enablers. They're flying monkeys. They're smart, and they know that if they don't enable narcissists, they will be targeted next. They know how to do what they need to do. They're insecure themselves, and they blithely proffer their emotional bodies for the narcissist to feed off of as a source of supply. They grant a lot of supply, they kiss a lot of ass, and they don't threaten or intimidate anyone in any way, or at least they act like it. So I hope that some of this information can help you better understand how narcissism manifests in the workplace and be able to spot the red flags earlier on before it's too late. I hope that helps. Take care.